We are busting narratives all to pieces in today's episode. The first narrative I'm busting is that the Big 12 conference of today is closer to the G5s or G6s than they are the quote-unquote P2 of the SEC and Big 10. I have numbers to back that up. I'm busting that narrative. The second narrative I'm going to bust in today's show is I'm going to bust the narrative that the old Big East, post Miami and Virginia Tech, was no more than a quote-unquote group of five conference of that era. I'm busting that narrative too, and I'm going to do it right now. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz Corner, your home for top-shelf college sports news and analysis surrounding the West Virginia Mountaineers and sometimes around the Big 12. Let's go ahead and start off with a talk about the Big 12 and why, this time of year, the college football playoff teams are announced, and for the second year in a row, the Big 12 only gets one team in. So it starts this whole narrative, well, the Big 12 is not much better than the G5s. They're just a glorified G5 with a P4 label, yada, yada, yada. I get tired of that narrative every year. Now, it wasn't quite as bad this year as what I saw in the past, but it's still out there. And I saw something about it floating around on social media a couple of days ago. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to do some research, and I'm going to see if I can bust this narrative, or is there something to it? And I have numbers to show you that I think you'll be interested in. So for all you Big 12 people out there who spend your time debating on social media, these talking heads who want to bash the Big 12, feel free to use these numbers, okay? But what I did, I went back, and for those of you listening, I'm going to read this to you, but I went back 3 years because I wanted to use the modern era with NIL, the transfer portal, the whole bit. I didn't want to water it down too much. So I only used the last 3 years, 2023 to 2025. How has the Big 12 fared against not only the other four leagues, but also against their G5 opponents? Because if we're looking at, hey, are they closer to the G5 or are they closer to the P2, you have to include the G5 games in here, right? So that's what I did. So let's go ahead and start off. The Big 12, when you look at how they fared against the other three Power 4 leagues in non-conference games, and this includes bowl games. And by the way, Notre Dame games are not included in here, okay? It's only the teams in conferences. But when you look at how the Big 12 has done, they have won exactly 50% of their games. They're 27-27. You might think, Couz, well, that doesn't sound too great. Well, it's not great, but it's also not terrible. And it's not that far removed from how everybody else has done it. As a matter of fact, you go one column over to the ACC, they actually have a losing record against other P4 leagues. They're 34-47 over the last 3 years. So for you Big 12 fans out there who are arguing with ACC fans on social media and they try to come at you and tell you the ACC is a better league, the proof's in the pudding right here. The ACC has lost more games than they've won against their Power 4 opponents in non-conference play. The Big 10, 52% win percentage, 32-29. Not that much better than the Big 12. Only 2 percentage points better. Big 12 not that far away from the Big 10. As I've argued over and over again, the Big 10 is a very top-heavy conference. You take out Ohio State, you take out Michigan of the last few years, maybe Penn State. I guess I could throw Oregon in the mix too the last 3 years. You take those teams off, Big 10 is no better than anybody else, and maybe worse, actually. You look at the performances of some of their programs like Rutgers and Purdue, terrible. So, anyway, especially Purdue. Rutgers has been okay. Purdue has been terrible, as well as some other teams in that conference. All right, now, you take SEC. And by the way, I forgot to mention Indiana at the top of the league, didn't I? Still hard to wrap my head around that. Anyway, let's go to the SEC. They're 44-30 over the past 3 years against their other Power 4 leagues in non-conference play. They are by far the best. Almost 60% of their games they have won against other P4 opponents. But the spread goes from 50% to 59% from Big 12, or actually from 42% to 59%, ACC being at the bottom, SEC being at the top, but you've got the Big 12 right there in the middle at 50%. So there's really not that big of a spread between the Big 12, definitely not a big spread between the Big 10, and really not even a huge spread to get to the SEC. So now let's look at the G5 competition that the Big 12 and other P4 leagues have played. If the if the Big 12 is closer to the G5 than they are the P2, then that means they will have lost a ton of games against G5 competition, right? Wrong. And here's the numbers. Here are the numbers. The Big 12 is 41-11 over the last 3 years against their G5 opponents. That's a 79% win percentage. And I know for those of you looking at the screen are going to think, Couz, they've lost more games to the G5 than anybody else. I'll give you that. But they're still dominant. Almost 80% of their games, they're winning. Does that sound like they are close to being a G5 conference? And to be honest, take out the outlier year of 2023, I think they've only lost 4 total games, about the same as the other 2 leagues. That 2023 season, for whatever reason, there were several losses to G5 opponents in 1 year. That's likely not going to happen much more going forward. But they've still won 79% of their games against G5 competition, which does, by the way, not include bowl games. There are not a lot of bowl games between P4 and G5s, so they're not included. The ACC has won 84% of their games against G5 competition with a record of 51-10, slightly better than the Big 12, but not that much better. Big 10 has won 93% of their games against G5. They have a 50-4 record. And then the SEC has won 92% of their games with a 57-5 record against G5 opponents. They by far have played I don't want to say by far. They have played more games against G5 than any other league and have won 92% of those games. So, long story short, bottom line of this video, of this segment of the video, the separation between the G5 and the P4 is pretty great when you look at on-the-field wins and losses. Does that mean I think the G5 should not get a seat at the playoffs table? That's not what I think at all. But I'm just trying to dispel this narrative that the Big 12 is closer to the G5 than they are to P2, because these numbers right here prove that to be much different, prove that to be false. Yes, the Big 12 hasn't won a ton of games, hasn't won a national championship. None of the teams in the Big 12 have won a national championship since 1990. I'll give you that one. But when you look at the league top to bottom in today's era, they're just as good, or at least almost as good, and they are much closer to the P2 than they are the G5. So hopefully I've dispelled that narrative. You let me know what you think in the comment section. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. Now let's get back to the show. Now, the second narrative I'm going to prove wrong is this narrative, and I don't really have a fancy spreadsheet for this one, but no worries. I don't need it. I've got my handy-dandy notes here. Anyway, the narrative I'm going to prove wrong this time is this narrative that I've seen floating around on social media the last couple of days about the old Big East. You remember the Big East, where once Miami and Virginia Tech and Boston College left the Big East in 2004, they were replaced by Louisville, UConn, and South Florida, or maybe it was Cincinnati. I don't remember the order, but nonetheless, you had a quote-unquote watered-down Big East. Okay, that's fair. When you look at brand value, there's no doubt about it. Losing Virginia Tech, losing Miami, and even at that time losing Boston College, you lost some big brands. Now, the Boston College brand has taken a hit since then, but there's no doubt you lost 3 good brands, and you replaced them with what at the time were not great brands. It was basically that era's version of the G5 moving up to the P4. Now, there's a narrative floating around that Big East, that quote-unquote watered-down Big East, and for those of you listening, I'm using quotation marks here, there's a narrative that Big East should not be considered a P4 level conference. My argument is, hey, they were a BCS conference. They got an automatic qualifier to a BCS bowl. That made them a Power 4 conference. Some argue, yeah, but that was just semantics. Just a formality. It was really a watered-down version. So, but let's take a look at what is relevant, what was relevant for that time period. So I went from 2005 season, after Virginia Tech, the first season they played without Virginia Tech and Miami, 2005 through 2010. I didn't include the 2011 season because that data is too hard to find. as far as season data. So I went 2005 through 2010, a 6 seasons. And I have the win-loss records of each conference against the other quote-unquote BCS conferences. When you look at the Big East, okay, they went for 51-60 over that time period, which is a 46% win percentage in their games against the other BCS conferences of the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and at that time, the Pac-12. And that was the Big 12 that included Texas and Oklahoma, by the way. 46% win percentage. Okay, losing record against other BCS conference opponents in the non-conference. I'll give it to you. That's not great, but here's the thing. They didn't do much worse than any of the other ones. As a matter of fact, they did better than some of the other ones. Let's go ahead and look at the other conferences. You look at the Big 12 during that time period. They had an overall record of 54-56 against non-conference games against other BCS conferences. 49% win percentage. The ACC, 66-80, a 45% win percentage against other teams in the other BCS conferences. The Big 10, also a 45% winning percentage, 1 percentage point lower, actually, than what the Big 12 did, or I'm sorry, the Big East did during that time frame. They went 45-55. The Pac-12 actually did the best of any of them. They went 50-39, a 60% win percentage in non-conference games against teams from the other BCS conferences. And then the SEC followed behind them in second place with a 57% winning percentage. They were 73-54 in games against other BCS conference opponents in non-conference play. So what's the moral of the story? The Big East fared just as well in games, non-conference games, against those other leagues as the other leagues did, outside of the Pac-12 and SEC. So to sit here and tell me that it was a watered-down conference, the numbers tell me otherwise. Now, did they win a national title during that time period? Again, no, they did not. That is the one mark every conference West Virginia's been in for the most part, fails, at least in football, fails to win national titles. Maybe the curse of West Virginia follows them into their leagues. I don't know. I wish I could explain it better. But when you look at when you look from top to bottom, top of the conference to the bottom of the conference, it was just as good as the other leagues, at least during the regular season. Now, let's look at BCS bowl games, because that's kind of how teams were measured back then. How many BCS bowl games did your conference? Today, we measure by getting teams in the city. Back then, it was, hey, how many BCS bowls did your teams play in? Because at that time, remember, they took the top 2 teams in the BCS rankings and automatically placed them in the BCS national title game, and everybody else got to play New Year's 6 games, what they called the BCS bowl system. I am going to include the 2011 season, the 2011 season here, because again, we were only looking at bowl games. It was much easier to find this data, and the Big East, with West Virginia and Pitt, were still around that during that time. But from 2005 through 2011 season, the Big East was 5-4 in BCS bowl games. West Virginia was actually 3-0 in BCS bowls during that time frame. They defeated Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. They defeated Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and they defeated Clemson 70-33, if you recall. The last year they were in the Big East, they defeated Clemson in the Orange Bowl, destroyed Clemson in the Orange Bowl, a team they were heavy underdogs against. Nobody thought little old West Virginia from the little old Big East had a chance. I remember Kirk Herbstreit running his mouth, talking trash, said West Virginia had no chance. They went out there and absolutely dog-walked the Clemson Tigers. And I would say I'd give them partial credit for Clemson's national title games. Because you know what they did after that game? They fired their defensive coordinator and brought in a guy by the name of Brent Venables. You know the rest of the story, right? You're welcome. From West Virginia, Clemson. Anyway, Louisville was 2-1 in BCS bowl games. And Cincinnati, UConn, and Pitt were all 0-1 during that time frame. So West Virginia and Louisville, I guess you could argue, sort of dominated the league during that time as far as their appearances in BCS bowls. And both of those have now gone on to be in Power 4 leagues. As a matter of fact, all but UConn and South Florida from that time are in what are called Power 4 leagues today. USF's trying to make a push to get in one, to get their seat back at the big boy table, so to speak. And I think they might be getting close. And then UConn is independent in football. So who knows if they'll ever get back into being a quote-unquote power conference again. But nonetheless, I think I have just proven to you that the Big East, even though it was quote-unquote watered down, and again, I use quotation marks kind of in jest, even though it was quote-unquote watered down with UConn and Cincinnati and Louisville and South Florida, on the field they were beating teams from those other BCS leagues. And the numbers bear it out. But you let me know, especially if you're a fan of one of those old Big East teams. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was it a watered-down version? Take brand – I understand the brand value piece of it. I get that. But from a competitive standpoint, do you think it was a watered-down version of a BCS conference? Let me know in the comments section. Also, let me know what you think about the Big 12 today. Are they closer to a P2 than they are a G6 or vice versa? Let me know in the comment section. And just let me know in the comment section whenever you want to let me know. Also, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on this video. That really helps the YouTube algorithm. Don't forget, if you're watching on your mobile device, you may see a button below called Hype. It's between the download button and the thanks button. Please hit that as well. Goes a long way. Also, comments help. All of that, any type of interaction really helps my videos, and it's all free to do. What's also free is subscribing to the channel. You'll see a subscribe button below, whether you're watching on your television, on your computer, or on your phone. It'll either be white, red, or black. It'll say subscribe. All you have to do is press it, click it, whatever. Bada bing, bada boom. You're a subscriber, and it's free. If you want to help me financially, you can join the VIP club like Houston Cougars Germany or Denny Allen or Daniel Gigax, Earl Carr, or TS. They are my random VIP shout-outs of this episode. If you want to join their club, the VIP member club, there are 2 levels. There's a $4.99 level and a $2.99 level. Perks come with each. The shout-outs come for all levels. And then you get early access to some content if you're a VIP level 2, a club level. And I'll also once in a while throw out some special content for my club level members only. For example, last week, I put together a little clip of some highlights of my own high school football career from back in 1998. I let those out or put those out for my club level channel members. If you want access to content like that and you want access to videos early on occasion, join the club level. If you're cool with just getting random shout outs and getting first priority in live stream comments, then the $2.99 level suits just fine as well. It's an easy way to support what I do here. Also, it comes out of your account every month. I think it adds up to 75 cents a day, something like that. It's an easy way to help me keep the lights on. I really appreciate you tuning into this episode. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf. God bless you. And Q Country Roads.